Good afternoon, everyone. We're extremely happy to be here today for the LuxFLAG webinar on the changes to LuxFLAG label features, where we're going to detail the extension to a 3-year label cycle. So my name is Ahmed Oumara, and I will be presenting this topic today with my colleague Rebecca Marocco, where we're going to dive into the key elements and key changes that are going to happen to LuxFLAG labels over the next quarter. So we have a number of participants and a great turnout for this webinar today. Thank you all for attending. We're extremely happy to be here and to present this topic. So without further ado, we'll go over the elements that we're going to discuss today with Rebecca. So first of all, the elements with regards to the key changes and the main aspects we'd like you to take away from this presentation. Then the case of the applicant fund status, and then a number of scenarios that we'd like to spend a bit of time going through so that you have the perfect understanding of the changes that are going to happen. And last but not least, we're going to discuss about the general terms and conditions and the changes that the extension of the label validity implies. So, moving on. Thank you. Moving on to the key changes we'd like to talk about. So first of all, the current label validity period is 1 year, and it will be extended to 3 years. And this will also have an effect on the label of the cost that are the cost of the label that are described in the table that you can see here. The reason why we're doing that is to increase the efficiency of the process from an applicant perspective. We've received an important feedback over the years and the time that we have built the application questionnaire and the way that we're handling the applications right now, that we can simplify and be more efficient in the way of handling it. And the answer that we're proposing to that is to have a label validity that is extended to 3 years, and where we can also take a bit more time to have a forward-looking approach with the funds, with the products, with the applicants, and where indeed we can run a number of additional controls, but also to engage and work hand in hand with the applicants to be in to follow the best market practices that we see. So let's take the example that we have here on this table. So 2025 is indeed the moment where we will have the initial application review. The content of this initial application review will be based on the pillars of the label reviews that we perform at LuxFLAG, and that apply to all label types. So these pillars are the following. These are known as the 4 Ps of the review of LuxFLAG. So these Ps are the first, the P for philosophy. We want to check what's the objective of the fund, what's the investment thesis of the fund, what are the regulatory aspects of the fund in terms of SFDR or in terms of other jurisdiction that the fund may be domiciled under. So really in the first P, the philosophy, we want to understand what are the objectives, what are the indicators, and the philosophy of the fund. Then the second P will be for process. In this process step, we want to look at the portfolio construction steps. So we're talking about selection of investee companies and also the monitoring of these investee companies and the risk aspects of it. We're going to look also at the systems aspect of it. If you have, for example, integrated systems that do take into consideration ESG data, if it's in one single platform or into multiple platforms that you're using, for example. So the second P, again, will be on the process. Third P stands for people and governance, actually. And this is where we actually look at the decision-making process that is applicable by the applicant. In this decision-making process, we want to understand if there are specific bodies that are responsible for the ESG aspects or the sustainability aspects of the funds, or if it's embedded into the investment, in the overall investment decision-making process, side by side with the investment purely fundamental aspects. So that's typically the types of element that we're going to look at this third P for people. And last but not least, we're talking about the P, which is the portfolio. In this portfolio review, we do screen the portfolio to ensure that it aligns with the label eligibility criteria. And also we run a sampling of it, where we're going to ask the applicants whether they do have research, appropriate research, and they can demonstrate that this research has been used into the decision-making process, which eventually meant that the security or this company is held into the portfolio. So really, again, in this initial application review, LuxFLAG will continue to perform a thorough review of the applicant funds, regardless of the labels. And then on a yearly basis over this extended period, we're going to have intermediary reviews. Those intermediary reviews, actually, they're meant to ensure that the label criteria are still applied by the applicant fund or by the label fund at this time, actually. So the intermediary review will most critically focus on the investment policy of the fund and whether there has been changes in the investment policy and strategy of the fund or the product. And also we're going to continue to perform criteria matching checks, in particular, looking at the portfolio, again, which will be screened and sampled. So these are key steps that you can expect LuxFLAG to perform at the intermediary review stage. After that, and during the label validity period, LuxFLAG is going to continue to perform independent checks on the data that is available about the product on a regular basis. Also on ad hoc basis, LuxFLAG is also able to go back to applicants to ask for additional details on the portfolio or on the life cycle events of the fund. So this is again what we're going to perform over these 3 years. There's going to be initial review, and then at a frequent basis, you're going to have intermediary reviews taking place at the end of year 1, at the end of year 2. There's going to be, during this 3 years period, regular controls where LuxFLAG may or may not revert to you directly with questions. And eventually, at the end of this validity period of 3 years, we're going to start over the cycle back to the initial application review. So this is something that you are already familiar with at the time of the renewal of the applications. So really, that's the key point we'd like to highlight in this presentation. Next to that, the cost of these reviews has been reviewed, where the initial application review will become 6,000 euros, and then the intermediary reviews will be 3,000 euros, the same as is currently applied. So obviously, these costs are label application review costs. So I think it's important to highlight this aspect as well. So we're going to move on the next slide, and in particular to discuss the case of the applicant fund status. So the applicant fund status is a transitory label that LuxFLAG may grant to those funds that are at their early stage. If a fund is existing from a legal perspective, yet does not have invested into actual assets, LuxFLAG may grant this applicant fund status, or AFS, to be then translated or converted into a full label once the fund has invested. So for these AFS, the label validity period is also aligned with the 3-year validity period of all the other labels. So it still also provides its key features, which is to give the possibility to those products that hold the AFS to benefit of a time window that is 1 year, which is renewable in a 1+1 fashion, still the same way as is currently, where the funds can grow, where capital can be raised, and where capital can be allocated to targets. So this is indeed how the applicant fund status is going to work. So here we have on this table the scenarios that are actually possible with these types of review. What do you see? On the yellow side of the tab of the table, you have when the conversion takes place at the end of year 1. So you're going to have an initial review, and then we're still going to perform when the label is actually going from the AFS to the full label. We're going to run an initial application review, confirming again the compliance with the criteria and going through the 4 Ps as we have discussed previously. And then at the end of the second year, you're gonna have as well the intermediary review, as is planned by the regular case and the regular validity cycle of the label. On the red side, or a bit colorblind, but yeah, reddish side of the table, what we're going to find is here the option 2, when the conversion from the AFS to the full label takes place at the end of the second year. And there again, what is really key to understand with this table is that the conversion from the AFS to the full label is actually triggering an initial application review. Clearly here, we're going from a status where there's no portfolio to a status where there is a portfolio, there are investments in the fund, and as such, it does require from LuxFLAG to go through it and to perform its checks and balances and ensure that it's in line with the label criteria. So right now we're going to go into the number of scenarios that we have as well, and that will be presented by my colleague, Rebecca Marocco.
Thank you, Amel. Just a side comment about the questions. We will have time for the Q&A after the presentation, and there are only 3 more slides, so we prefer to go to present them before discussing. But we took note of your question, Pascal. Yes, so Ahmed presented the general picture, the rules, and we thought it's important to present to you some specific cases. So first, here we will look at the specific cases in case of changes from us, from LuxFLAG. So what are these cases? So first, if there is a change of criteria, if we decide based on the market practices and on the regulation or many other reasons, we decide to change the criteria, then what does it mean for you when you are already in the 3 years cycle? So you have your label. So first thing, your label is still valid, of course, until the end of the agreement, but there is a transition period for you to comply with this new criteria. So this will come during the next renewal. We will review your application based on the new criteria, and if you don't comply with the criteria, we will follow up with you for the completion, but the label will still be valid. But yes, it's a case, and there is no impact on the fees. If the applicant then decide to opt out, there is this possibility in case really there is a decision from the applicant that the new criteria are not in line with the strategy of the applicant, then there will be a possibility to opt out at the next renewal date. So that's the first case. Another case for a change from LuxFLAG will be a switch of label. So if LuxFLAG decides to create a new label and you decide that this label is more appropriate for your strategy, then it's a possibility we took into account, and we want to leave you this freedom during the 3 years. So in this case, you will have the possibility to have a new initial review. So instead of the intermediary review, you would go for a new initial review based on the new label criteria, and we will start a new cycle. So it will be a new agreement at this time. So these are the only changes from LuxFLAG we can cover, we expect. And we also took into account the possibility of changes from the applicants. Well, what happens if there is a breach from the applicant in the criteria, compared to the criteria? Then in this case, there are two possibilities. The first one would be that there is, of course, there is a discussion and we find a solution to remediate to this breach. And the other option would be that we revoke the label, but we don't expect this to happen, because if this happens, it means that the applicant decides to go for a new strategy, which is not more in line with the criteria of the label. So that would be really not a common case. And in this case, the fees and the agreement are still applicable, because there is no reason to change them. We agreed from the beginning on this criteria. And the second case would be a life cycle event or force majeure. So if the fund decided to terminate, to liquidate, or to end the life cycle of the fund, so of course the agreement will end and the fees will not be applicable after the end of the life of the fund. So this so these are the various cases we have foreseen here, and we wanted to share with you. And of course, all of this is included in new legal documentation. So we have drafted general terms and conditions that will be available on the website in the next few days. And we will share them with you as attendees of the webinar. And so these terms will be always available on the website. And instead of the letter of intent that you currently signed at the beginning of the process, we will have a new subscription form, which will be referring to these terms and conditions. So there will be no, we did our best to make it simple. And yes, so that was all for the presentation of these changes, of this extension. And now we can open the Q&A session. So, and don't hesitate to put on your camera so we have more interactions. Thank you.
Again, I think what we want to say with this presentation is that we hope that you are as excited as we are to extend the validity period of the label, that this brings simplification for you, and also time savings, effort savings at the time of the intermediary reviews. we've built a number of safeguards that also will not require any intervention from your side to be able to perform an independent monitoring on the label funds. It may, however, on an ad hoc basis, imply that LuxFLAG comes to you during the validity period to ask for an extract of the portfolio, for example. Also, I believe that Rebecca went through a number of cases and scenarios to show that indeed there are a number of possibilities. All of them are covered in the terms and conditions that we're going to be putting online very soon, and that we would be happy to continue to discuss with you as soon as it's out there. If you have any questions, we are again available to answer them. Obviously, whether it's now or in the coming days or weeks at your convenience, we're willing to make this extension of the cycle as smooth as you've indicated it in the in your feedback over the past few months.
So we'll look at this this first question. The question is, may I ask where the 4 Ps concepts you were just referring to is described?
So this 4P concept, that's a very good question. Thank you for asking. This 4P concept is really the way we do articulate our questionnaires. So that's typically part of our internal methodology. That's something we're happy to describe a bit more into our webinars, like we're doing today, and that will continue to advertise on the way LuxFLAG does things, and those actually its application reviews. If you look at the way those questionnaires are built, or if you are an applicant that is under labels that are not yet into the questionnaires, this is something that you're going to discover very soon, because we aim to transition all the labels into a questionnaire fashion. So those elements are elements of review, and this is really the point I want to insist on. It's elements of review that do allow us to not only deliver a label, because at the end of the day, the labels depend on the criteria, but thanks to this 4P approach, we're able to deliver more than a label. This is really the source for us, all the input that we receive, that does allow us to provide you more than a label and to actually flesh out a feedback that does allow the applicants to actually reach the next level or to align with the best practices that we're able to witness with other fund management companies, thanks to the input that they share with us as well. So this way, we are able to sort of benchmark a number of practices for every single P that we have listed in there. And as such, we're able to compare against your application file and to encourage you to go into some territories, maybe we can, so to speak, where we indeed can show you maybe additional ways to do things when it comes to the sustainability aspects of your funds. I hope it answers your question, Pascal. Feel free to get back to us if you feel we're missing something.
I can continue with the question from Birgit. So about when it starts, this new cycle that you have described today. So if you have a renewal next year in October, in March or in June, so then the review we will start with a new agreement. So your label is valid, obviously, until then. And then when we will review it, we will apply the process we have just described and sign an agreement for 3 years. So next year in 2025, we will have for the renewals, I'm not speaking about the new application. We will have initial reviews, and in 2026 intermediary reviews, and in 2027 intermediary reviews again. So this is how it will work for the timing of the process.
Next question we have from Betsy. What did lead to the exclusion of cash in the calculation?
You're speaking for the microfinance label, yes.
Yes, and actually that's something we can extend to all labels. The stance of LuxFLAG is to consider that cash is neutral, in the sense that we cannot say that holding a cash position is an ESG investment. So as such, when we look at those numbers, we always like to look at investments and consider cash as a separate. When it comes to cash, in particular, what we want to make sure of, and I'm sure this is also something you're looking as well, is to stay within the regulatory boundaries of the funds and ensure that the cash levels remain appropriate in light of the restrictions that the fund is subject to according to its regulatory status.
Okay. I see the new question is not anymore related to the 3-year cycles, but they are interesting questions. For your information, we will have a webinar in December about the microfinance criteria, and we will continue with quarterly webinars every time we're on a specific topic. We are always happy to discuss. So this question is about so I understand the fact that we will bring the questionnaire to the microfinance. It will not affect the content of the review, because we had another internal tool before that was used, which wasn't this questionnaire, which was covering this review. It will just facilitate the process. And about the criteria of microfinance, and they have been updated, but we have communicated to the labeled microfinance labeled funds already, and we will communicate more about it, as I said, during the next webinar.
Yeah.
And
really, you can expect the same scope of data to remain the same. The form is changing, the content remains the same.
Mm-hmm. And the question about the new labels, what do we have in mind? The future will tell.
No, we can clearly speak about the social impact label, but also if you have, we are willing to continue to extend our range of labels in the coming years, to stick with the best practice in every single sector as well. So some of those impact labels that we already have, they are indeed focusing on some specific sectors, whether it's climate or it's environment, for example. So it might be the case that those labels are subject to changes in the future, or that we promote or that we design new labels as well. We want to remain stable as much as possible. And with this point in particular, what we want to say is that label switch may take place, and that if you feel that this is something that is more relevant for you and for the strategy of your fund, this is something that is indeed possible. And with those terms that we have put into this presentation, we want to highlight that this is something that is absolutely feasible. But again, I think as the market evolves, the criteria hopefully will continue to evolve, and also there are also new trends that we want to capture with our labels, or to highlight or to facilitate the investment into some sectors. And again, that's typically something we want to do with the social impact to start with, and we are also looking at the future, considering potentially other options that may unfold over the next few quarters or potentially 12 months as well. But again, here I want to focus first on the social impact. This is where we have as a first element here. There again, that's something that is still subject to a number of internal approvals, but we want to first mention it, also continue to mention it here, as it's been also mentioned publicly over the past few weeks.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So the next question is about the quarterly checks. So we do perform quarterly checks within LuxFLAG. So this is not, you're not necessarily aware of this, because we don't necessarily need to contact you when we perform these checks, because we use our data vendors, and we can perform the screening of the publicly available information on these data vendors, so on the portfolios of the funds. And we would contact the applicants for the labeled products in case of breach. So that's why you haven't heard about us, about this quarterly checks, and that's ongoing within LuxFLAG. And the next question is about the microfinance webinar. So it will take place on the 3rd of December. And but you already have the information about the new criteria with the criteria list. So the webinar is just to support you if you have questions about this new criteria. And we are available before, of course, via emails or via phone if you have questions to prepare your application for December. Thank you, everyone, for all of these questions. It's I hope it's benefits to all.
Yes, I see someone raising his hand.
Can you? Yes, you can.
Please.
Yeah, hello from my side, and thanks for the presentation. I think there are some questions in the Q&A section as well, or under the tab, and then my questions were basically the same that were raised there. So firstly, in our case, we are up for renewal like by the end of December, to be granted the renewed label starting from April 1st. So I was wondering whether the new questionnaires are already available somewhere, or what's the kind of practicality that we should keep in mind when having this renewal cycle. I think there's one question related to that as well there in the Q&A. Thanks.
For which label are you applying?
We are having currently the ESG label.
So the questionnaire will remain basically the same, and
okay.
and the renewal of the label will be taking place by the end of November. We're going to share the questionnaires that you have provided last year, and we're going to ask you if these answers still apply.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And just a question. My camera doesn't work, but it's on the same topic. But so then it will be with the new version of the label, so with the 3-year application period.
Absolutely, Camille. Your thinking is correct. If you apply for Q1 25, you will be in the first batch of products that will receive a label with a 3-year validity period.
Okay.
I think we had a question before. What if my renewal date is in September or later this year? Well, the label that you currently hold is valid for a year. And then it means that if you're due for renewal, or if your label is valid until 30th of September next year, 2025. Then at the end of September 25, if you renew and assuming that everything goes well and that you're granted again the label, then it means that you're going to receive it for a new period starting from 1st of October 2025 up until 30th of September 2028. So that will be our 3 years.
Hello from my side as well. I just have a question. I was not sure if I fully understood. So about the criteria. So from what I understood is you explained the processes, but will there be any new criteria or any new, will there be any new format compared to what it has been like? Because, for example, what you explained, the 4 Ps, I'm speaking because we applied for the LuxFLAG ESG discretionary mandate. So is there anything that will, for example, change starting from next year, criteria-wise or content-wise?
No, content-wise, what we can say for now is that if there are changes, you can only expect changes in the most likely in the format more than in the content, right? And especially if you're under the discretionary mandate, because I think there are a number of similar aspects or aspects that we can potentially clarify in the way that the criteria are written so far. So that's that you can expect. That you can expect a clarification, meaning that it does not require any change in the day-to-day management of your portfolio with regards to those criteria. Because there again, we're talking about the way they are worded and the way that they are also fleshed out. I think also we want to detail a bit more what we do, and like we did, going through the 4 Ps. So that's also something where we want to tell more through the criteria as well, so that also you understand better our expectations when it comes to the application review process.
And for the ESG label products, or if you look at the questionnaire, how it is currently, you will find the 4 Ps. You will find the specific questions on the philosophy, investment objectives, the questions on governance, etc., process and portfolio. So it's already here. It's just that we have never put it that way, maybe to you.
Okay, because that was actually a question as well. If it's the 4 Ps philosophy has already been integrated in the current Excel document you always sent.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. So I'm checking the Q&A and the chat, and I believe there is no more question for now. We can wait a minute.
Anyway, I think that we, of course, remain available to answer your questions at any time. You know the operations@luxflag.org email address. You might have already our individual contact details. This is something we're happy to bring out. This is something we are willing to discuss further with you guys. The aim of this webinar is to shed more light on it, to give all the details that are necessary for your understanding. And if we need more, if you have more questions coming up, if you take this home and if you discuss internally and there are additional questions, we're happy to have separate calls or meetings or answer an email you might have on this topic. And if there's no more questions, we're going to close today's session. Thanking you again for your participation and for your questions. And we hope to hear back from you very soon. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.